Hello, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. And first of all, let me just take a second to congratulate you if you're here in this 30 degrees or so in the middle of the day, then you're really motivated to hear something about self-doubt. So first of all, thank you and congratulations, and I really hope to earn your trust in these 20 minutes. My name is Bo. And what I'll be talking about today is self-doubt and imposter syndrome, and a little bit about how to manage those and how to build the opposite, which would be something like self-confidence. And I have promised myself and you that it's going to be a very kind of practical, hands-on, methods, etc. Type of a session. So I'm just really going to deliver that. I'm not going to talk at all about the theory. I think if you're here, then probably you know what self-doubt is, perhaps even also what imposter syndrome is. So I'm just going to go straight into that. But before I do that, I did want to say two things, yeah? There are two elephants in the room when we talk about self-doubt. And that is, and especially imposter syndrome, which is a name, primarily, first it was called imposter phenomenon. It's been researched since the late 70s, and it's kind of these all sorts of behaviors and thoughts and feelings surrounding about feelings of incompetence and I'm not good enough, I'm not delivering, and so on and so forth. Usually it's research within the scope of work. And of course, I'll be talking most about that today, but it also exists within relationships, yeah, when you feel you're not delivering according to what's expected in relationships. So there are some shadow sides to talking about this. And one of them is really that many of the first researches, and perhaps even since today, when we talk about kind of how you can manage self-doubt, that tends to put the pressure and the responsibility on the individual. Yeah. So it's kind of, I mean, I'm going to be exaggerating here a little bit. It's like, here, how you can fix yourself. And that's not cool. And the reason why that's not cool is because these researches have historically not been very good at examining what the effects of systemic racism, transphobia, misogyny, classism, xenophobia, and so on, ableism, have on you as an employee in this case, right? So I think, if you find yourself within a context that's not ready to accommodate you, to make you feel welcome, to make you feel that you have a place, then I think feeling that, oh, wow, maybe I don't belong here, maybe I don't have a place, maybe I'm a fraud here, I don't think that's something that needs to be pathologized. I don't think that that is okay to. Historically, actually, imposter syndrome was kind of thrown first at women and at women of color, and it was something like, oh, you have imposter syndrome, go deal with it, without actually critically examining the system. So this is my first thought that I want to share with you. I don't need you to fix yourself, and first of all, systems need to be fixed. Yeah. Having said that, if you find yourself within a system that you think is supportive of you and you still feel a sense of self-doubt, then I will tell you a few tools that I think could be helpful. The second is, I've been already talking about, systemic bias, and of course, along the lines also about privilege. And here's the second thing. I mean, I think it's a little bit absurd or ironic that here I am, and a white, able-bodied, cis man talking about self-doubt and imposter syndrome and how to deal with them. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge my privilege. And I want to acknowledge the fact that my experience has been different to your experience. And I do not want you to make you feel that I'm minimizing your experience, which may have been more challenging in many cases than mine. Right. So if at any point in this presentation I sound like a too optimistic self-help book, please apologize. It's because of the brevity of time, not because I think this stuff is easy, because I know that it's not. And I want to just really respect your journey and your experiences. And having said that, buckle up, let's go. I'm going to tell you a couple of things, and I'm not going to be using slides because I didn't think that the time would be enough. So just bear with me. If you like writing down notes, then perhaps you would want to do that, or just join in the Q&A session later, and I can go more slowly through them. But the first thing that I think is very important to mention is the idea that whatever you decide to do. However, when you start proactively kind of managing your self-doubt and saying, okay, I'm just going to be working on building my self-confidence, just be gentle on yourself. Yeah. This is always true, that I think the more you manage to just kind of like lovingly or kind of from a slight distance, just observe yourself non-judgmentally, the more it's going to help. But it's even more so true when you're dealing with feelings of incompetence. I don't want you to feel also incompetent about having perhaps some fallbacks. It's like, yesterday I was feeling much better, but today I'm again really scared before this presentation. Yeah, it's okay. Just observe it and kind of go with it. So I think it's very important that you work with what is now, and allow yourself to be in this process and to be on this journey. And it takes me to the second point, which is acknowledging the feelings. Any kind of progress when it comes to doubt and when it comes to related feelings is going to be only available to you if you start by accepting where you are. And that sounds very tough, and we're historically so bad at accepting negative or intense feeling or challenging feelings. But without acknowledging that, okay, yes, right now I'm feeling insecure, right now I'm feeling self-doubt, it's going to be really difficult for you to move out of that place, because you're going to be busy fighting your feelings. So you will not only be having the feeling of self-doubt, but you will also be feeling silly about having the self-doubt, right? You're adding another internal conflict, and this makes it quite difficult. So even though it's very challenging, and this itself, I think, is one of those things that we often fail to highlight enough, I think that's kind of where it starts. This is your gateway to actually finding some solutions. Number 3 will be talking about it. So once you have kind of managed to say, okay, right now, what I'm going through is a feeling of, self-doubt. I'm saying myself, oh, I'm a failure, I'm a fraud. One of the things that has been researched a lot, that seems to help, is essentially sharing that feeling and talking about it. 70% of all adults will experience imposter syndrome at one point in their lives. And people who belong to marginalized communities will feel it even more, or so have a higher percentage in this case, which means that you have such a good chance, when you're feeling like, oh, right now I don't think I know what I'm doing here. There's a good chance that if you actually share that feeling with the person sitting at the next desk, or these days on the other side of the Zoom call, there's at least 70% chance that the other person is going to say, you know what, thank you for saying that, because I do too. And helping each other through feelings of self-doubt is a really good way to deal with it. The first groups that were started, kind of counseling groups, or therapies that were started about to deal with imposter syndrome, were all group therapies. And that's the reason, because hearing others go through the same experiences is in itself a helpful experience. That was number 2. 3, actually, that was already 3. And now come all of the different reframings. And I think this is what you would expect just a coach to talk about. So I'm going to deliver on that for 1 second, because I have some doubts about kind of the depth of these. But this is actually, you can also create tools, reframing tools for yourself, and you can also find a lot. And I'm also happy to share some more in the Q&A session if you would like me to. But what it happens is, just to kind of give you a general structure, when you're going through this intense kind of overwhelming feeling of self-doubt, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail at this, etc., then what you can invite yourself to do is to invite an internal third perspective. Let's say I invite this person, my plant here. They can represent my inner wise person right now, or a very rational person, a person who will be able to kind of measure the pros and the cons. So if I'm saying to myself, I'm a failure, then I'm inviting a part of myself to kind of take a little bit of a distance and invite, okay, so, okay, this is how much I'm a failure, and this is how much I actually succeeded this time, right? And what's the trick about this here is to try to go beyond this right or wrong, really bad versus perfect binary. I guess in a call like this, I don't have to talk about what a beautiful thing it is to try to move beyond binaries and this right or wrong. complete disaster versus perfect, kind of a binary which our inner critic operates on, is a very tough one. So kind of just moving beyond that, like thinking about it like, okay, so 5% of what I did was a total mess, but another 95% was kind of okay. So in order to do that, so that's all of these methods are inviting your rational faculty. And what usually these kind of self-help approaches do not tell you is that it's really bloody difficult to access your rational faculty when you're overwhelmed with strong emotions. Yeah. So when you're in fight or flight, when you're going through this thing, then essentially the blood is not flowing to focus on your cognitive functions. Your blood is flowing to make sure that you're ready for a danger, right? So for this reason, I think that reframing is great. And if you find a tool that's right for you, and I'll talk about that in 1 second, that's good, but I think you need to be able to take that distance first. And one of the things that I think is very useful in these cases when you're feeling overwhelmed is just going back to your body. So I will try to, if I don't run out of time, which I'm starting to, so I will be talking a little bit more about body-based methods because I think they're really, really effective when we find ourselves overwhelmed with emotions. What we can really do is just take 10 seconds, literally, when you're going into a presentation, for example, to just feel your feet on your ground, or you can feel your feet, your body sitting on a chair being held by it. You can take a few deep breaths. You can open yourself, yeah? What that will do is just kind of like help your nervous system just calm down for 1 second. If body-based methodologies are not your jam, I respect that. The other thing you can do is train yourself, and this can actually become automatic. I've seen my clients train themselves to do it. So let's say I have a sentence that keeps on going. By the way, it's really useful to give a speech bubble to your self-doubt, yeah? So my speech bubble, for example, could be, I don't know enough about this to give a speech about it, or I'm not good enough, or I'm a fraud, or whatever. So then the way to kind of create this little bit of a space would be something like, there's a part of me who believes that I'm a disaster, right? That actually implies that there are other parts of me as well. Or there's another one which I really love, and clients also love, the story that I'm telling myself is that I'm a fraud. Thanks to Brené Brown for the second one. So instead of saying I'm a fraud, which is kind of like an overwhelming kind of thought, you get to the story that I'm telling myself is that I'm a fraud. And that creates that little bit of a breathing space for you to then start evaluating. And I'm not going to go into what you can do in evaluating. It's important that you're still gentle on yourself. Yes, you can ask yourself gently, is that true? What proof do I have that it's true? Let's look at the rational kind of things. Let's evaluate. You can try reframing mistakes, etc. Maybe if I have some time at the end, I'll tell you a few more things here. But yeah, try to help yourself, or this wise person represented by my plant here, to not see black and white. Help them see the nuances in between. There were some things that were good. There were some things that were bad, and that's also true for your performance all the time. Okay, so that was one thing. And if you find out what your speech bubble is, then one thing you can do is come up with an exercise or come up with a framework of evaluation that specifically responds to that speech bubble. And that is something you can come up with, or we can actually bring some in the Q&A. When you have that speech bubble, the other thing you can do is actually try to observe, and now I'm going a little bit deeper, so there's a slight trigger warning here, is to examine what is the belief that is underneath it, yeah? So we have traditionally, we've been brought up, and all through our lives, we kind of receive truths, yeah? Which we, especially when we're children, etc., when it comes from our family, then we don't really have the capability to reflect on them, so they just kind of become truths. And these can subconsciously very often operate, and kind of when you come to a statement like I'm a fraud or I'm incompetent, and then there must be something that's underneath it that's kind of driving that thought. That's the thought. And going deeper and understanding that is really helpful. So the first thing that I very often suggest is just kind of trying to map out what are the statements. And I will have clients, for example, if it's a leadership topic, if you're feeling insecure in your role as a leader, then it would be a good idea to actually map out what kind of what truths do you hold about leadership? Who is a good leader? And you will collect lots of statements, and these are not some of them are necessarily not good or destructive, or and I think that's partially what the problem is. Yeah, we may have internalized truths that are currently causing us a lot of self-limiting beliefs and feelings, etc. But I think that some of them are simply, I think most statements are, have their positive sides and have their shadow sides. Like with an intention to not work with a really triggering statement right now, I have, for example, one of my truths is practice makes perfect. Yeah. So on one hand, I have to say this statement opens doors to me. It's kind of empowering, because when I feel, oh, I'm not good enough, then this statement, practice makes perfect, kind of tells me, yeah, you can keep on trying and practicing and you'll get better, right? Which is a good thing. At the same time, it presupposes the existence of perfect, which does not anymore fit into my current value system. I actually don't believe that perfection is possible. And I've also seen myself and clients be so stuck trying to achieve that sense of perfection and not starting anything before it feels perfect, that I think that there are shadow sides to wanting to strive for perfection. Right? So in this case, what can I do? I can, first of all, be aware of it. So observe intentionally my language and see what it does to me, and then try to fine-tune it. Statements do not get deleted. You cannot just delete a line of code and expect for the whole thing to function, but it can be slightly fine-tuned. So I can decide to believe that practice will make me better and better every time. And then I can try to see how I feel saying that, and I can practice being the person who believes in that. And slowly, it's going to get, it's going to become part of my thought pattern. So this is a deeper level. Even deeper is body-based and mindfulness-based technologies. And here, there's definitely a trigger warning, because thankfully, there's more and more research about how mindfulness is not for everybody. And if you had major trauma, then mindfulness is not good for you. It actually can be quite destabilizing. So don't do mindfulness-based techniques if you've had major trauma, or do it with a professional. But what you can do, and I've talked about centering, and I talked about breathing and stuff like that. But I can also just try to feel what it feels like. So how is a thought of like, I'm not good enough, for example, how is that thought in me? And what I notice, and I'm going to a little bit exaggerate so that you can see it on the camera, but I notice that every time I have this, I'm not good enough, I start becoming smaller. I'm making myself small. Yeah, and this may not be the case for you. So you will have something else. This is my example right now. Yeah. So first of all, I can notice what this does to me. I'm starting to feel pain in my shoulder, which is really good, because that's also what I feel really, like indicative, because it's what I feel when I come out of a Bürgeramt, yeah? Like bureaucracy makes you feel small as well, yeah, same thing. So then I can ask myself, because I have a choice as well, then I can ask myself, okay, so where does my body want to move now? And I think my body wants to kind of just open up. I wanted to take a deep breath, so I did. And maybe I even want to kind of like spread my hands out just to take space. And this takes space I'm taking from a whole kind of coaching discipline called embodiment. And I really want to credit Mark Walsh, who is the person who's very much behind it. So if you're interested in body-based techniques that you can use in 2 minutes and to instantly change your mood, check him out. So what did I want to say? Yeah, so what can you do with your body? So when you realize that this is the pose in which you feel spaciousness and you feel larger and you feel more confident, so this is your confidence pose, so to speak, you can practice being in that pose proactively. When you're experiencing self-doubt, you can do it. And this is really, this whole thing that when we're happy, we smile. But when I'm unhappy and decide to smile, my mood will shift as well, because the mirroring goes both ways. Yeah. So this is pretty much the oversimplified. That is the principle here. So what you can do is essentially just observe your body as well and help yourself feel more comfortable. Yeah, especially if you're the whole day sitting like this on your computer, then you're already in a pose that for me would be making me unconsciously kind of fight my self-doubt. I could say a bit more about that, but I won't, because I want to get to my final point, which is that if it's too confronting or too challenging for you to fight your self-doubt directly, the other thing you can do is balance that out by proactively building your self-confidence. Yeah, and it may be for you, it's self-confidence or self-belief or self-esteem or any of these. And these are all the worst self indicates. These are all about the relationship for your own, with your own self. Yeah. So I know that the relationship with yourself is not an easy one. Usually it isn't, but it's a relationship you can work on. And self-confidence, nobody is born with self-confidence. Don't confuse self-confidence with arrogance. Yeah. So self-confidence is something that gets built. And self-esteem, self-acceptance, these are all things that you can actually work towards. And there are lots of things that you can do with self-confidence. Last year, I was talking at this conference, and I gave a full speech about how to know your strengths and why it's very important that you know your strengths, to know your resources. So I encourage you to do that. And I also would very much encourage you to just ask for feedback from people and ask for resource-based feedback. So ask people to tell you what you're good at. And you can also train yourself to tell other people what they're good at, because if you learn to notice the resources, the competencies, the talents of another person, you're more going to notice it in yourself as well. Yeah. If you're very much focused on your failures, make sure that you keep a success tag. So keep taking notes of your successes. And if you still want to take notice of your failures as well, try to reframe them to learnings and take a list of what you learned from your difficult situations and past shortcomings. And I've run out of time. So I hope you're still on board after these 20 minutes. I know it was super compact, and I apologize for that. I just really wanted to give lots of little things. From here, I will be heading into the Q&A. So if you want me to kind of expand on a little bit on these, you're really welcome to. I'll be there for about 20 minutes because it's too hot in my room, so I won't take more. But if you're there, we can have a quick chat. And I'm also, if you have a question, just shoot. I wish you all the best on this career journey. And if you're looking for a job right now, and that's why you're here today, then I wish you all the best with that. And yeah, I just wish you. I'm just sending you my love from here, and thanks. Goodbye.